The wind lashed across the ancient stone steps of Achto, carrying the sharp bite of salt from the restless sea below. Rey stood breathless from her climb, her arm outstretched, offering the lightsaber like a sacred offering. The moment hung suspended, charged with the weight of destinies colliding. Luke Skywalker's gaze lifted from the lightsaber to her face, his expression a storm of emotion. Surprise flickered first, his eyes widening slightly as if startled by her presence, a stranger who had braved the stars to find him. Beneath the weathered lines of his face, there was a silent acknowledgement. I don't know who you are, but I can tell you've come a long way. Yet, as he studied her, his eyes deepened into wells of grief, so ancient it seemed woven into his very soul. The lightsaber wasn't a hero's weapon to him. It conjured ghosts, his severed hand, the smoldering ruins of his temple, the betrayed face of his nephew. But in Rey, he saw more. The fierce resolve in her stare, the stubborn dust of Jakku clinging to her boots, the sheer force of will that had brought her to this hidden world. He didn't reach for the saber, nor did he cast it aside. His gnarled, calloused hand closed gently over hers, guiding the weapon downward with a touch both firm and kind, a gesture that whispered, "This is not the answer." Without a word, he turned and began his slow ascent toward his stone hut, his steps heavy with the weight of years. Rey stood frozen, confusion etching her features as the rejected lightsaber grew heavy in her grip. "I'm from the Resistance," she called after him. "Your sister Leia, she sent me. We need your help. The First Order—" Luke didn't turn, his voice a low rumble nearly lost in the wind. "I know who sent you." He paused at the hut's entrance, glancing back, not at the saber but at her. "And I can see you've come a very long way to deliver a message I already received a long time ago." He gestured faintly toward the sky, encompassing the galaxy he'd forsaken. The failure, the call for help, it's always the same. Now he faced her fully, his gaze piercing, searching. Not the wild stare of a mad hermit, but the weighted scrutiny of a man who had seen too much. "But they didn't send just a messenger, did they? They sent you. Who are you?" There was no arrogance in his question, only a bone-deep, weary curiosity. He sensed the raw, untamed power within her, echoing the desperate hope that had once defined him, and it stirred a fresh ache in his chest. "I'm no one," Rey replied. A faint, sorrowful smile touched Luke's lips. "No one is ever no one, not to the Force. Come inside." He vanished into the hut's shadowy interior. Rey hesitated for a heartbeat, then followed, the lightsaber still clutched tightly, its purpose unfulfilled, but its journey far from over. Inside, the hut was sparse and dim, redolent of brine, damp stone, and ancient texts. Rey lingered near the entrance, her eyes adjusting to the gloom as Luke moved to a small basin, his back to her. "You flew here?" he asked. "What kind of ship?" The Millennium Falcon." Luke froze, his shoulders tensing visibly. The name hung between them like a specter from another life. He turned slowly, a fragile spark of hope flickering in his eyes, the tentative longing of a man who had lost everything, inquiring after a cherished friend. "The Falcon. Made it all the way out here." Quietly, almost to himself, he added, "Is Han? He must be too old to be flying that rust bucket by now. Let Chewie do the work, I suppose." Rey's expression crumpled. She averted her gaze, struggling to form the words. "Han, he came with us. To find you. He helped us." She drew a steadying breath. "He was killed. By Kylo Ren." The revelation struck Luke like a physical blow. He staggered back, his hand groping for the rough stone wall to steady himself. In the faint light from the doorway, tears glistened in his eyes. "No," he whispered, the sound gut-wrenching. He squeezed his eyes shut, his face contorting in anguish. Silence enveloped them, broken only by the howling wind and the distant cries of porgs. "I felt it," he murmured at last. "A disturbance, a sickness in the Force. Days ago, a great pain. I thought it was just my own." His eyes opened, unfocused, his voice thick with self-reproach. I should have been there. This grief transcended Han's death alone. It was the culmination of every misstep, every regret. His closest friend, slain by the boy he had mentored and lost, and Luke had sensed the ripple in the Force, yet dismissed it as his own lingering torment. His exile hadn't shielded the galaxy from suffering. It had merely rendered him absent from it. He regarded Rey anew, seeing beyond the bearer of ill tidings to an emblem of the ongoing struggle. And you brought his ship. You finished his journey. His eyes flicked to the lightsaber in her hand, not as an emblem of a defunct order, but as his father's legacy, now conveyed by the ally of his dearest friend. Luke's gaze softened, sensing the weight of her own losses in the Force. Is there anyone in your life, someone you're fighting for, out there? His question was gentle, probing, as if he felt the echo of her attachments. Rey shifted, her grip tightening on the lightsaber. There's Finn, she said, her voice softening. He's my friend. More than that, maybe, if things were different. He risked everything for me on Starkiller Base. She hesitated, then added with her characteristic bluntness, I've known men, but I prefer women. Luke raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Oh, don't say that at a Jedi Academy. They'd prefer you live like a hermit, hand you a robe, and tell you to be one with the Force. His tone was deadpan, but the glint in his eyes betrayed a flicker of the old Luke, teasing her with the absurdity of the old Order's ascetic rules. Rey blinked, caught off guard, then let out a small, incredulous laugh. You're joking, right? Half, Luke admitted, his smirk fading into a wistful smile. The old Jedi had their ways. Thought attachments led to trouble. I learned better, eventually. He turned back to the basin, his voice quieter. Hold on to that friend of yours. The galaxy's too cold without people who matter. Rey looks down, her voice soft but intense. It never goes away, that feeling of being abandoned. You feel cold, not because you are, it's because nobody loves you. So your heart has nothing to keep it warm. I think Finn got that. Luke studies her, his own defenses finally, fully down. He nods slowly, a look of profound recognition in his eyes. I was that kid too. Grew up with no parents. Raised by my aunt and uncle on a moisture farm. Dreaming of something bigger but never being able to get away. A moment of heavy, shared silence hangs between them, a bridge of understanding forming. Luke's eyes fell once more on the lightsaber, the full burden of its journey crashing upon him. The entreaty was no longer abstract, from some distant resistance. It was intimate, from Han, from Leia, from the fight Rey carried forward. Later, on the cliffs overlooking the sea, Luke perched on a weathered rock, his gaze fixed on the descending sun. Rey approached warily, setting down a bowl of broth beside him. Chewbacca lumbered up the path in her wake, emitting a low, sorrowful groan. Luke looked up, his eyes brimming with shared agony. Chewie. He rose and enveloped the Wookiee in an embrace, a prolonged, wordless communion of mourning. Chewie rumbled softly, a query laced with lament. I know, Luke replied. I felt it. I should have been there. He drew back, resting a hand on Chewbacca's arm. What were we supposed to do, huh? One last fly around the galaxy in the Falcon? Just the three of us? A sad, fractured smile crossed his face. Life isn't like that. He turned toward the ocean, his tone drifting into reverie. My father died. At least what was left of him. On Endor. And all I can remember from that night isn't the celebration. It's the smell of wood smoke and the acrid scent of his steel suit burning. We thought it was a happy ending. We didn't know. We didn't feel that somewhere else on that moon, a chunk of the Death Star had started a fire in the forest. The victory and the collateral damage happening under the same stars. Silence stretched out. Rey and Chewbacca waited patiently. Behind Luke, a faint ethereal blue figure materialized, perceptible only to him and the unseen observer. Kay Keldroma, garbed in archaic Jedi robes, his countenance radiating boundless compassion. The fire always burns, Luke Skywalker, the apparition intoned, his voice an echo from antiquity. For a Jedi, the question is never whether you can put it out, but whether you will pick up the bucket. Luke didn't turn, but he absorbed the words. I failed, he whispered. Like Ulick failed. Ulick was redeemed, Kay replied, as was your father. The path back is never closed. It is a choice. Do not make my brother's final mistake. Do not let your grief become your tomb. The spectral Jedi dissolved into the ether. Luke inhaled deeply, his breath ragged. Rey stepped nearer. Who were you talking to? He met her eyes, a steely determination kindling within. An old friend. Pausing at her bewilderment, he added, You get that in the Force. The past is never really gone, and it has a lot to say, if you're willing to listen. He glanced from her to Chewbacca, then down at the lightsaber, now secured to his belt, accepted at last. Come on, it's time I started atoning. He strode toward the ancient Jedi steps, Rey trailing behind, her mind reeling from the profound history unfurling before her. The fraternal tragedy, the crushing weight on Luke's shoulders. Okay, but how does Leia fit into all this shit? Rey muttered under her breath, overwhelmed. Luke halted abruptly, pivoting to face her with grave solemnity. The silence lingered a fraction too long. I think you're going to turn to the dark side now, he said, utterly deadpan. Rey's eyes widened in alarm and dismay. Had she shattered this fragile accord? What? No, I didn't mean... She trailed off as Luke's severe facade dissolved, a subtle spark of amusement lighting his eyes, the first authentic trace of his former self. First lesson, Jedi Masters appreciate bluntness, he said. My sister always was the diplomat. I never had the patience for it. His voice lightened as he resumed walking. Come on, I'll explain on the way. Rey exhaled sharply, a blend of relief and exasperation washing over her. She quickened her pace to match his. Along the ancient path to the first Jedi temple, the silence between Luke and Rey shifted from tension to thoughtful quietude. It wasn't all grand, Rey confessed. On Starkiller Base, when I fought him, it was cold. The snow was red with blood. My friend Finn, he was lying there, his back cut open. I was so angry. I didn't even think. I just fought. Luke nodded, his focus on the trail ahead, though his thoughts wandered back through the years. I know the feeling. The first time I used my lightsaber in combat, it wasn't against a Sith Lord or a stormtrooper. He paused, a subtle wince accompanying the recollection. It was on some moon. I don't even remember the name. A jungle at night, so dark you could barely see your hand in front of your face, and I heard this sound. A low groan, like the air itself was warning me I wasn't supposed to be there. What was it? Rey asked. We called them shadow stalkers, like a white puma, but wrong. All muscle and teeth and eyes that glowed like embers. One came out of the ferns first. It wasn't evil. It was just hungry. And I was in its territory. He stopped, staring at his hands as if the memory still stained them. I ignited the blade. It just made it angrier. It leapt. And I swung. It was over in a second. But then another one came. A mate, I think. I had to do it again. He met Rey's gaze, his expression heavy with enduring regret. I didn't want to kill them. I still don't. I don't know if every living thing has a soul in the way we understand it. But not everything that has a soul has a good one, and I wasn't safe that night. Sometimes there is no peaceful way out, only survival, and you carry the weight of that choice afterward. He resumed walking. Your anger on that snow. It came from a place of wanting to protect your friend. That's not the dark side. That's being alive. The trick is not to let the survival instinct become your only instinct, to remember the cost of the swing. Rey fell silent, absorbing his words. Her own clash was reframed, not as a failure, but as part of a deeper, more poignant truth about wielding power, a lesson steeped in empathy and wisdom, far beyond a simplistic creed against combat.